Welcome to Paranormal Files. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and in today's episode, we'll journey into a reality where the rules of time, memory, and physics unravel without warning. People freeze mid-step, strangers recall lives they never lived, and everyday moments flicker into impossible patterns. These aren't dreams or hallucinations. At least that's what the witnesses claim. Today, we explore a chilling question. What if reality itself is breaking down? In a small town outside of Toronto, a man stepped off a curb to cross the street and froze, literally, midair. According to multiple eyewitnesses, he hovered inches above the pavement, motionless, as if someone had pressed pause on a remote control. Traffic halted. A woman screamed, and just as suddenly, the man snapped back into motion, unaware of what had occurred. He swore nothing strange had happened. Bystanders filmed the incident. The footage spread across forums and Reddit threads, triggering a digital wave of similar confessions. Stories of people vanishing for seconds, time skipping like a scratched DVD, or everyday objects duplicating themselves. These accounts, now collectively known as glitches in the Matrix, borrow their name from the 1999 sci-fi film. But unlike fiction, the reports keep piling up. Real people, real confusion, and no rational explanation. A woman in Missouri recounts how her husband died in a car crash, only to walk through the front door 2 days later. A barista in Spain insists she served coffee to the same customer 3 times in 10 minutes, each visit exactly the same, down to the words exchanged and the position of his hands. Skeptics dismiss these as misremembered details or mental lapses, but patterns emerge. Certain areas, urban intersections, grocery stores, rural stretches of highway become hotspots. Inexplicable time loops, déjà vu that extends for hours, or entire conversations repeated word for word days apart. These stories are strange enough on their own, but when they start appearing in clusters across continents with nearly identical descriptions, they take on a far more disturbing tone. In 2013, an anonymous caller to a late-night radio show described waking up in an apartment he didn't recognize. Everything was familiar, yet subtly off. Photos on the wall showed him with strangers. His reflection wore slightly different clothes. Even the view from the window revealed a skyline that had never existed. He searched for his phone, but the device was missing, replaced by a model that hadn't been released yet. Hours later, after falling asleep on the unfamiliar couch, he awoke back in his own bed. The skyline, the phone, the strangers, all gone. To this day, he questions whether he briefly slipped into a parallel dimension or was simply dreaming with unprecedented clarity. These anomalies don't follow any known pattern of neurological disorders or recognized psychological phenomena. They appear spontaneous, deeply personal, and hauntingly consistent. The question is no longer just whether these events are real, but what they mean. Could they be clues? Evidence that our reality is not as solid as we believe? And if so, who or what is behind the curtain? In ancient philosophy, the concept that reality may not be what it seems has echoed through time. From Plato's allegory of the cave to Hindu Maya, the idea that the world is a shadow of something more complex has deep roots. But the modern incarnation of this concept, the so-called glitch in the Matrix, has evolved into something uniquely digital, eerily mechanical, and persistently unexplained. Long before the internet allowed these stories to spread globally, people were reporting similar phenomena in isolated pockets. In 1978, a man named John Zeising from Des Moines, Iowa, reported to local police that he had experienced what he called a lapse in the world. Driving home late one evening, he passed the same gas station 6 times in succession, even though he never turned around or changed direction. The attendants, lights, and customers were identical on each pass. Frightened, he finally pulled over, only to find the station completely boarded up. It had been shut down for nearly 3 years. In 1983, a nurse in Berlin claimed to witness a hallway in her hospital flicker between 2 versions, one normal and the other filled with unfamiliar equipment and signs written in a language she couldn't recognize. The transition lasted only seconds. She was never able to replicate the experience, but she insisted it was real. Interestingly, 2 other nurses on the same shift later admitted under pressure to having seen something strange that night. Ancient tales contain their own strange echoes. The Celtic otherworld, for example, speaks of travelers who step into fairy rings or misty woods, only to emerge decades later, unchanged, in a world that has moved on without them. Similarly, Japanese legends tell of people entering hidden villages in the mountains and returning to find their entire lives erased. These stories, once regarded as folklore or allegory, take on new meaning in the context of modern-day glitches. Historical records show that in 1587, during the Roanoke colony's disappearance, a strange report emerged from a sailor anchored nearby. He wrote in his journal of watching torchlights along the shore flicker unnaturally, repeating patterns in the same exact rhythm every night, like a scene being played on a loop. He believed it was a signal. Later scholars dismissed this as stress-induced hallucination, but the eerie detail, the repetition of a sequence with unnatural precision, mirrors modern glitch stories perfectly. Even in more recent history, the Philadelphia experiment of 1943 stands out. Though widely considered a hoax or exaggerated tale, it spoke of a U.S. Navy ship allegedly vanishing and reappearing, with crew members embedded in the ship's metal. Some theorists believe these kinds of experiments may have torn or folded space-time, contributing to the rupture points we now describe as glitches. The term matrix may be recent, but the idea behind it is not. It has taken different names through different cultures and eras. Illusions, spirit worlds, interdimensional bleed-throughs. Yet one theme persists, humans catching a glimpse, if only briefly, of a reality beyond the one we think we know. Whether triggered by technology, trauma, or simply coincidence, the pattern remains consistent and chilling. Something is not right with the world, and people have been noticing it for a long, long time. In 1999, shortly after the release of The Matrix, online forums like Above Top Secret and later Reddit's Glitch in the Matrix thread became repositories for eerie accounts from ordinary people. These weren't science fiction writers or thrill seekers. They were teachers, engineers, nurses, teenagers. They shared bizarre moments of duplicated time, misplaced memory, and physical impossibilities that didn't fit into any conventional understanding of the world. One of the earliest and most circulated posts came from a woman who said she watched her husband walk into the kitchen and vanish mid-step. A crash followed. She ran in, panicked, only to find the room empty. 20 minutes later, he walked in through the front door, holding a bag of groceries. He had no idea what she was talking about. He hadn't even left the car until just moments before. She never found any explanation, and nothing like it ever happened again. But the sheer detail and emotional confusion in her post resonated with thousands. Another user told the story of dropping his keys behind a heavy cabinet. Annoyed, he planned to retrieve them after work. But when he returned home, the keys were already on the kitchen counter, despite no one else having access to the apartment. Suspicious, he moved the cabinet anyway. There, beneath a layer of dust, were his keys, the exact same set. He now had two identical keychains, down to the scratches on the plastic. One, clearly untouched for weeks. The other, still warm from his pocket. In Chicago, a train commuter boarded the Blue Line to downtown, as she had done every weekday for years. That morning, however, the train stopped between stations. The lights flickered and went dark. Passengers looked around in silent confusion. When the lights returned, she found herself sitting in a car full of different people. Not strangers, different. The seats were red instead of blue. Her phone displayed no signal. The train pulled into a station that hadn't existed the day before. She stepped out. The city was familiar but wrong. After an hour of walking, she claims she blacked out and woke up back on her usual train, pulling into her normal stop. She never rode the train again. These stories, though wildly different in detail, share several common threads. Time behaves erratically. Objects duplicate or vanish. Familiar places warp into something subtly off, and the people who witness these changes often experience physical symptoms, dizziness, headaches, memory gaps. Many describe the moments as feeling like a curtain had been lifted, exposing something artificial behind the everyday world. Eyewitnesses are often shaken to the core. They report a lasting sense of paranoia or dread, as if the fabric of their lives had been momentarily unraveled. Some never speak of it again. Others, after discovering similar accounts online, feel a disturbing sense of relief that they are not alone. But with that relief comes a deeper, darker question. If these glitches are real, then reality itself might not be. And if reality can falter, then what else might slip through the cracks? In 2016, a team of researchers from the University of Edinburgh began collecting anecdotal reports of perceived reality distortions. Though the project was unofficial and quickly abandoned due to lack of measurable data, internal emails later leaked online revealed a troubling detail. Nearly half of the collected stories involved precise, isolated time lapses experienced in crowded public areas. Multiple witnesses reported the same skips: someone blinking and finding a store had emptied, or a group of people stuck in a 10-second loop, repeating gestures and words like broken animatronics. While mainstream science has dismissed these as misinterpretations, pattern recognition gone haywire, or symptoms of neurological stress, other institutions have taken more interest. A declassified memo from 2004, sourced from a Freedom of Information Act request, references something called perceptual disruption events, logged by the Department of Defense. The report details multiple instances during urban surveillance exercises where agents witnessed scene duplication, vehicles or individuals appearing twice in separate locations during the same surveillance window. The documents are vague, but the terminology, temporal overlays, synthetic echoes, displacement anomalies suggests the events were taken seriously, if not fully understood. Paranormal investigators have tried their hand at documenting these glitches in a more structured way. In one case, a private research group calling themselves the Horizon Watch began investigating reports of reality breaks in a stretch of rural Idaho known locally as the Dead Mile. Residents along a remote road near Pinehurst began reporting recurring moments where the same car would pass every evening at exactly 6:37 p.m. Not just the same make or model, the exact same car, same driver, same expression, same cracked windshield. This went on for 7 consecutive months. The vehicle was never seen elsewhere in town and had no license plate. Then, one day, it stopped. No one ever saw it again. The research team placed sensors, cameras, and even EMF detectors along the road. All footage during the sightings mysteriously corrupted, skipping frames, audio dropping out, or the vehicle failing to appear altogether on tape. Skeptics argue that mass suggestion, digital manipulation, and the echo chambers of internet forums are enough to explain these occurrences. But their consistency across geography and time remains hard to ignore. In 2019, during a popular paranormal livestream in the UK, a camera crew broadcasting from a haunted estate in Yorkshire captured a moment in which one of their team members appeared twice, once on screen beside the group, and simultaneously walking down a hallway on a different camera feed. The duplication lasted less than 5 seconds. No technical explanation was ever given, and the video was pulled offline within days. Copies still circulate in paranormal circles, analyzed frame by frame for proof. In official circles, most investigations into glitches are quietly shelved or reclassified. The phenomena don't conform to conventional testing, and replicating events is nearly impossible. But that hasn't stopped individuals from documenting their own encounters. A growing number of people are now using wearable cameras, sleep monitors, and time-stamped journaling in hopes of catching one of these anomalies in real time. So far, the results have only deepened the mystery. For every piece of debunked footage, another slips through, uncanny, unsettling, and impossible to explain. Among those who study glitches seriously, theories tend to fall into 2 camps, one grounded in fringe science, the other in the supernatural. The simulation theory remains the most well-known. Championed by thinkers like Nick Bostrom and even acknowledged by Elon Musk, it suggests that reality as we know it is a hyper-advanced simulation created by a civilization so far beyond our own that we cannot detect its boundaries. Glitches, then, would be errors in that system, rendering failures, memory leaks, or data corruption that momentarily expose the falseness of our world. Some researchers have even drawn parallels between reported glitches and bugs in virtual environments. Non-player characters looping behaviors, textures failing to load, or physics breaking down in ways that defy known laws. Supporters argue that just as complex video games occasionally hiccup, so might the universe if it's built on computational architecture. But others take a more metaphysical approach. In spiritual circles, glitches are seen as glimpses through the veil that separates realities. According to this view, what people call reality is merely one layer of many, and glitches represent overlaps between parallel worlds. These may occur during emotional trauma, altered states of consciousness, or even in moments of extreme boredom, when the mind relaxes just enough to catch the threads of something deeper. Those who've undergone near-death experiences sometimes report glitch-like visions, scenes repeating, voices echoing, time slowing to a crawl before snapping back. Some theorists believe these moments are evidence of a consciousness-based universe. If reality is in part created by collective belief, then disturbances in that belief, intense fear, confusion, or focus, might momentarily destabilize the shared illusion. A mass disassociation event, for example, could lead a group of people to perceive time differently, or even warp an object's appearance through sheer expectation. This theory intersects with quantum physics, particularly the observer effect, which suggests that the act of observing something can change its state. If true, then consciousness isn't just a passenger in reality, it may be part of the engine. On the darker end of the spectrum are theories involving manipulation. Black ops projects, electromagnetic experiments, or classified psychological trials may be disrupting reality at localized levels. In these scenarios, glitches are side effects of something larger: military-grade simulations, dimensional rifts, or directed energy tests gone wrong. Whistleblowers on obscure forums have hinted at government knowledge of soft spots in reality, zones where time loops, causality breaks down, or people disappear entirely. These areas, they claim, are monitored but never acknowledged publicly. Still others turn to the ancient. Some believe glitches are signs of forgotten cycles, events that play out again and again, echoing through time like a scratched record. The Mandela effect, where groups of people remember events that supposedly never happened, is cited as further proof. Why do so many recall the Berenstain Bears as Berenstein? Why do some insist that Nelson Mandela died in prison despite historical evidence to the contrary? These could be artifacts of reality rewriting itself, or of us slipping unknowingly between slightly different versions of the world. In all these theories, one thing remains constant: glitches challenge our assumptions. They force us to question not just what is real, but what real even means. And in doing so, they open a door, one that once noticed can never truly be closed. In recent years, the number of reported glitches has surged, thanks in large part to the internet and the rise of short-form content. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Reddit threads are now overflowing with clips and confessions that, while often dismissed as entertainment, occasionally defy easy explanation. One particularly viral video showed a flock of birds frozen in midair, wings outstretched, suspended like puppets on invisible strings. The camera pans around them, capturing multiple angles. After several seconds, they snap back into motion. The video was quickly labeled a hoax, but no concrete evidence of manipulation was ever provided. Other clips show planes hanging motionless in the sky, clouds rippling like water, or people caught repeating identical motions seconds apart as if stuck in loops. Some are clearly staged. Others feel too raw, too unscripted to dismiss so easily. And while not all of these can be verified, the sheer volume of reports, many from people with no obvious motive to lie, adds weight to the phenomenon. The cultural impact has been profound. The term glitch in the matrix has entered everyday language, often as a joke, but sometimes with a shiver of genuine unease. TV shows, horror films, and even music videos now lean into the idea of reality bending or breaking. What was once a niche theory is now mainstream, a meme and a warning, wrapped into one. But not all attention has been playful. In 2021, a young man named Bryce Taylor went viral after live streaming what he called a time distortion incident in his apartment. During the stream, clocks in the room began to tick backwards. He walked off camera, and his voice repeated the same sentence 3 times in a row, with different inflections, before cutting out. The footage was pulled midstream. When he reappeared 2 days later, his account was deleted, and friends claimed he refused to talk about what happened. To this day, no original file of the stream has resurfaced. Only screen recordings and fragments passed around in private Discord servers. Meanwhile, certain locations have become infamous for strange activity. In Los Angeles, a downtown underpass known as the Crooked Mile has gained notoriety for reports of missing time. Drivers claim to enter the tunnel and emerge minutes, even hours later, without explanation. Dashcam footage from these incidents often cuts out, glitches, or loops, despite no evidence of hardware failure. Researchers from small, independent institutes have begun taking these reports seriously. The Institute for Applied Ontology in Finland has logged over 800 global reports of high-strangeness events tied to digital timestamps. They've mapped several correlation zones, urban centers, abandoned towns, wilderness intersections, where the frequency of reported glitches is statistically higher than elsewhere. They avoid drawing conclusions, but they do suggest that some phenomena may involve structural instabilities in what they call localized temporal fields. In rural South Korea, a farmer's home security footage went viral after showing a delivery truck approach his property, blink out of existence, and reappear moments later in a completely different position. The driver claimed to have experienced nothing unusual. The video was submitted to a Korean research team who noted no signs of splicing or artifacting. They simply filed the footage as unresolved. Despite increased attention, no central authority tracks these anomalies. There is no official hotline, no database of events. Those who experience glitches are often left to search for meaning on their own, finding comfort in shared stories, but no answers. And still, every day, more stories appear. New videos are uploaded. Reality, it seems, continues to misfire. The psychological effect of experiencing a glitch is often described as more unsettling than the event itself. Many who report these incidents don't just feel confused, they feel unmoored, as if the ground beneath their feet has shifted, and with it, their entire understanding of how the world works. This trauma isn't always dramatic or violent. It's a quiet kind of existential horror, a deep, lingering doubt that creeps into everyday moments. If the laws of physics, time, or memory can fail once, how can anyone be sure they won't again? In the weeks following a glitch, some people report symptoms similar to dissociation or derealization. Common experiences include feeling disconnected from their surroundings, time seeming to move too fast or too slow, and familiar objects or people seeming subtly off. A woman from New Mexico who encountered a sudden location shift while walking her dog described it as the moment my life split into before and after. Her therapist, unable to classify the experience, suggested it might be a lucid psychotic break. But the woman insisted it wasn't madness, it was clarity. A terrifying clarity that something was very wrong with reality. In online communities, the need for validation and explanation often clashes with ridicule. Those seeking help are frequently met with skepticism or jokes. But within the silence, there are patterns. Words like hollow, stuck, looping, and echo recur in testimonies. Even across languages and cultures, the emotional language people use to describe glitches shares a haunting consistency. Cultural attitudes toward these experiences vary. In the United States and much of the Western world, they're often brushed off as stress-induced hallucinations or media-fueled fantasies. In contrast, some Eastern philosophies frame them as moments of spiritual awakening, cracks in the illusion of samsara, or glimpses into a higher state of awareness. In indigenous cultures, such events may be seen as spiritual messages or ancestral signals, warnings rather than malfunctions. In the aftermath of high-profile glitch reports, communities have developed rituals to ward off future incidents. In parts of Brazil, people leave mirrors outside during full moons, believing they reflect unstable energy away from their homes. In Japan, a growing subculture of anchorers uses routine and repetition, such as eating the same meal at the same time daily, to keep themselves tethered to a stable version of reality. One blogger referred to it as maintenance for the matrix. Art has also become a mirror to the phenomenon. Independent filmmakers, digital artists, and musicians have created entire projects centered around the idea that we live inside a broken system. In these works, static replaces dialogue, environments shift like sand, and identity dissolves into code. It's more than aesthetic. It's a cry of recognition. For some, glitches are a curiosity. For others, they are the beginning of a philosophical or spiritual collapse. And for a small but growing number, they're a call to action, a reason to search deeper, record obsessively, or isolate themselves entirely. Because once someone has seen the edges of reality ripple, once they've felt time stutter or watched a loved one duplicate, they rarely return to the world unchanged. The glitch lingers. Even when everything seems normal again, it's there, in the corner of the eye, in the static of a screen, in the silence between words, a reminder that nothing is as solid as we're told. Across all accounts, the most chilling aspect of glitches in the Matrix isn't the bizarre phenomena themselves. It's the way they strip reality of its authority. When an event occurs that cannot be explained, predicted, or understood, it lingers in the mind like a virus in the code. It infects memory, certainty, and trust in the structure of everyday life. Patterns emerge across different reports, even when the locations, languages, and cultures vary. Key details return again and again. Time slowing or doubling back, people and objects vanishing and reappearing, duplicate memories that defy logic. A recurring element is the momentary pause, the world halting for a second too long, the eerie silence that precedes a flicker in behavior. Eyewitnesses describe these pauses as emotionally heavy, loaded with something beyond fear. It's a sensation of witnessing something you were never meant to see. People speak of changes in temperature, an overwhelming feeling of being observed, and the sudden certainty that the scene around them is no longer real. They are actors, they say, suddenly aware of the stage. Physical spaces also repeat. Hallways that stretch too long, staircases that lead to themselves, towns that look identical down to the cracks in the sidewalk. Some have called this the copy-paste effect, where environments seem to glitch in their own rendering. A hiker in Colorado shared how he followed a trail he'd walked dozens of times, only to find the landmarks out of order, the sun in the wrong position, and the sound of nature replaced by a strange, pulsing hum. He turned around and the trail had vanished, replaced by open field. In another case, a man in Dublin reported waking up on a train alone, despite boarding with two friends. When he reached the next stop, he exited to find a station name that didn't exist. Signs were written in a variation of English with slightly altered grammar. The people around him ignored his questions. Panicked, he reboarded the train, passed out, and awoke in his own home with no idea how he returned. His phone had no call history from that day, and a full hour of time was missing from every app. The deeper you look into these reports, the more difficult it becomes to separate them from one another. There's an echo to them, a low-frequency hum of consistency that makes dismissal feel dishonest. These stories may not be proof in the traditional sense, but they share a rhythm, a psychological fingerprint, a way of disassembling reality in increments. They reflect a growing cultural paranoia, a quiet revolution against the idea that the world is fixed and trustworthy. And perhaps that's the most important clue of all, that when enough people begin to question the rules, those rules start to crack, not through violence or force, but through the simple accumulation of stories, small, strange personal moments that suggest reality is not as it appears, that behind the surface of our daily lives, something else may be operating, something watching, something maintaining, or something failing. What if every glitch is not a malfunction, but a signal? A coded message embedded in the structure of our existence, meant to be noticed only by those paying close attention. If that's true, then perhaps these moments, fleeting as they are, offer glimpses into the true nature of reality. What if time is not linear, but a layered spiral, and each glitch is a ripple where one version of events bleeds into another? In that framework, déjà vu might be more than a neurological hiccup. It could be a moment when our consciousness briefly overlaps with another version of ourselves, living out the same decision differently. There are theories that every major decision forks reality into infinite parallel paths. If so, then glitches could be evidence of those paths overlapping, moments when the veil between timelines thins and we briefly step into another thread. You might see someone who's already walked past you walk by again. You might hear your name whispered when no one's around, because in that alternate path, someone was right there with you. These are not coincidences. They are the shiver of the multiverse brushing against itself. And then there are more disturbing possibilities. Some speculate that we are not the intended audience of our own reality, that we're like characters in a program being observed, studied, or even tested. In this view, glitches are not mistakes, but stress tests, triggered to gauge reactions. A person duplicated in a crowd. A moment of missing time. A child's toy that moves positions when no one is home. Not accidents. Experiments. If we are in a simulation, who runs it? And why do they allow us to see the seams? Another hypothesis suggests we are in a dying reality, one collapsing slowly under the weight of its own instability. Glitches could be the early warning signs of a larger unraveling. If so, what happens when the cracks get too wide to ignore? Do we fall through into another layer? Do we wake up somewhere else? Or does the simulation simply shut down, one consciousness at a time? Religious and spiritual interpretations often frame glitches as signs of awakening. That moment when something impossible happens. A stranger who knows your name, a hallway that shouldn't be there, a voice that repeats exactly what you're thinking, might be the moment your soul recognizes the illusion. Some call it ascension. Others call it breaking free. Either way, it's not about malfunction. It's about escape. But not every interpretation offers comfort. Some theorists believe we've always lived in a fractured reality, and that the rules only appear consistent because our minds filter the chaos. A glitch, then, is not a break in the system. It's a failure of the filter. An accidental glimpse of the world as it truly is. Unstable, recursive, and far stranger than we're equipped to understand. In each possibility, simulation, multiverse, spiritual awakening, systemic collapse, glitches become more than urban legends. They are existential landmarks. They challenge the most basic assumption of all, that our experiences are grounded in truth. But if that ground is shifting, then so is everything built upon it, including who we are and what it means to be real. If glitches in the Matrix are real, if they're more than misfired neurons or confused memories, then we are left with a reality that can no longer be trusted. The objects we touch, the people we know, the very timeline we live in, may be far more fragile, more conditional than we ever imagined. For many, this idea is paralyzing, but for others, it becomes a strange kind of liberation. If reality is not fixed, then neither are its rules. If the world can change in an instant, if cause no longer guarantees effect, then perhaps we are freer than we've ever dared believe. But freedom, in this sense, is terrifying, because it means that nothing is guaranteed. The continuity of your day, the memory of your past, the solidity of your home or your reflection in the mirror, these could all be constructs, upheld by something we don't understand and vulnerable to error. It means that the universe may not be governed by immutable laws, but by scripts that glitch, loops that misfire, and unseen editors working behind the scenes. Editors that don't always get it right. When people recount their experiences, they often hesitate, not because they doubt what they saw, but because they know how it sounds. They fear disbelief, ridicule, or worse, that their story might plant the same doubt in someone else. The kind of doubt that once seated never truly goes away. It lingers in the background, recontextualizing the mundane. The flicker in the lights, the song that plays twice, the stranger with your face, the recurring number that follows you from receipts to clocks to room doors. There is no final answer, no single explanation that accounts for every glitch story. And perhaps that's the point. The confusion is not a bug, it's a feature. Ambiguity keeps us searching. Uncertainty keeps us questioning. And the more we question, the more we may begin to see the world for what it really is. Not a seamless reality, but a brittle construct held together by threads we barely comprehend. We may never know who or what is behind the curtain, whether it's advanced AI, divine beings, other versions of ourselves, or something that defies language altogether. But what's certain is this: the phenomenon is growing. More people are waking up in the middle of the night with the sense that something is watching. More are seeing places they've never been to, but somehow recognize. More are reporting moments when the world shifts, freezes, skips, and resumes with just enough difference to feel wrong. And maybe, just maybe, these aren't accidents. Maybe they're invitations. Maybe every glitch is a doorway waiting to be noticed. Not all of them can be walked through, but those who've seen them never look away again. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Paranormal Files. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Paranormal Files on Spotify. Subscribe now